Thank you, guys. Let's welcome Murat. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got this presentation, and it's hopefully going to be really relevant to some of the stuff you're doing. It's not so much about Marvel, but more about the journey that got Marvel started. So going from a side project that got started in our bedrooms right the way through to getting funding and all the different bits and pieces that happened along the way, and a couple of little life lessons that I learned, and some of them might be relevant and hopefully useful to you as you kind of move forward. The reason I met Ed was just through Wagon and a friend of ours, and I saw the amazing presentations and demos that happened the last time I was here. So many of you are entrepreneurial, and like it's exactly the kind of thing that hopefully this will be relevant to. So to kick it off, so Marvel, if you don't know already, it's a prototyping and design and collaboration platform, and allows you to kind of take a design and turn it into something that looks and feels like a real app or website without coding. So naturally suited to the entrepreneurial spirit of kind of many of you here, and people who want to get an idea and just take it from an idea to hopefully something they ship. And it originally started from this experience of me being a designer, and I used to work in loads of different agencies around London, always coming up against the same problem, which was that I would do a bunch of designs for iOS, Android, or whatever device, give it over to someone who would go and pitch it to a client and watch them shove it into a PowerPoint presentation, like make it super pixelated and horrible, and you just look at it and go, well, I just spent 2 weeks on that, and now it just looks like a blurred mess. So this was me. This is kind of like what I look like at agencies, as this is happening more and more. But I also started to notice that, do any of you work in agencies, by the way? So far? Okay, great, so I'm not offending anyone. All right, so the kind of work you get in an agency, and if you do decide to pick a path through design or product, the way agencies work is you typically do a lot of branded work. So a client will come to the agency and say, hey, we're about to launch this new type of soap, and we want an iOS app to celebrate that moment. And you don't really need an iOS app to promote soap. But that was the kind of stuff I was doing day in, day out. So by the end of it, my portfolio looked really bad. And I wanted to go get a job at Facebook or Twitter and one of these great product companies. And I ended up like going to them with a portfolio full of apps like Dove moisturizing cream for iPhone, where you would search through the forest to find the ingredients for the moisturizing cream. And those were the sorts of things I ended up making. So after a while, basically, I wanted to leave, and my portfolio looked like a bunch of daytime TV ads, but just dressed up as apps and websites. So it wasn't really good for my future. But I also actually needed more experience in product and building a product, what it meant to have a user, what it meant to iterate, what it meant to get feedback and then test, and all those really exciting things that many of you are doing with some of the ideas you have. But I wanted to do that as my job. And I couldn't get that from an agency. And I also thought that if I went to freelance, I could probably have more time to work on my own stuff. Like everyone wants to, a lot of people with that kind of entrepreneurial vibe want that idea. And I just didn't have that idea. I knew I wanted to do something, but I just didn't have the reason to stop and drop everything and go and pursue that. So this was the moment that I decided to leave the agency. This is an actual client brief that I received. So I got that, and I was like, right, now I need to hand in my notice and find another place to work. So basically, that moment, I realized that nothing was going to get better from that point, and it was probably time to do this. So I actually handed in my notice, and I decided that I would just leap into the freelance world, or just like try and make an idea happen. And one of the things you kind of get used to working at agency is that it's actually quite a cushy job. You tend to just come up with lots of different ideas. You sit in brainstorms, you write on whiteboards, and it's kind of easy. Like if you're working there, you're not really too stressed. It's a great social life, all that other stuff. So I realized that if I didn't take an action which would prevent me from ever doing it again, that I would just constantly get called up by another agency and go, oh, come and work, and I'll do that. So I decided to write a blog post that shat all over the agency world, and posted it across social. So if anyone ever Googled my name, this would come up top, and then they would see that I wasn't right for that agency. So I wrote this post, which is why talent creators leave your shitty agency, and I listed loads of reasons why. And it got picked up by lots of different publications, and my name was attached to that, so therefore no one would hire me after that. So it actually worked. There was a lot of angry people actually after that. So I was like, well, I have to go it alone now I have to find something to do. So how did Marvel start? Side projects. I think side projects are one of the most brilliant ways to get out a kind of creative urge or an idea and be passionate about something that you can't do on your day-to-day work, that you can go home and actually drive forward and you're not reliant on anyone else. During the day at work and some of the places I've worked at before, you have like all these great ideas, but you have to convince someone else that that idea is great, and that's the barrier that always prevented me from moving forward on them, because if you need to ask your boss for development resource, then you're always going to be blocked by them saying yes or no, and the restraints on the company. But with a side project, you can actually do something that is completely free of anyone else's input. So that was the law for me. So the very first side project I did that got out the door was this real simple thing, and it was a side project where you had this snow globe and there was a little robot inside, and you shook it on Safari for iOS and it just snowed, and that's all it did. And the reason why we made this was because I was at this agency and and it was a mobile agency, and they sold innovation, and they were like, right, we're one of the most innovative agencies in the world, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, cool, why don't we do something at Christmas where we can show our customers how much we care about them and how cool we are by giving them a Christmas card that's on the mobile. And then you shake it and it snows. And it's a really, really simple concept. And the CEO of that agency said, look, I'd prefer to spend that resource and money on AdWords instead. So I was like, okay. So I decided to contact a friend of mine who I worked with at another agency in the past, who is now my co-founder and a CTO. And I said to him, look, I've got this idea. They said no, can we just build this? He's like, yeah, that would take like half a day. And we just crack it out on a Sunday. So we did that. So just before Christmas we launched, and only 23 people looked at it. So it was a disaster. It was actually a waste of time. But the good thing is me and Brendan got to work together outside of the day-to-day work that we did, and we kind of formed this relationship of he was really interested in building things, I was really interested in designing and building things as well, so we formed that. But some lessons from this moment was that don't ever release anything in the week before Christmas. No one's around, no one's online, so that was one life lesson. But also what happened after this was a year later, we went back, like Brendan went his way, I went my way, and we got a different freelance job and whatnot. So a year later, this book came out by a guy called Luke Wabowski, and it's called Mobile First. And he's a UX guru that specializes in mobile. He worked at Twitter and Google and some other places. And this book came out, and I don't know if any of you have read it. It was pretty popular for a while. It just tells you how to design for mobile. So a year later, everyone's talking about this book. I was like, cool, I'm going to go buy it. I get the book, open it up, and inside is a snow globe. So of the 23 people in the world that looked at that, one of them happened to be an author of a book, and he published it. So it just goes to show, don't ever hoard your ideas. Get things out into the wild. If you're not putting it out there, then you have less of a chance of someone finding it. I think I used to get really precious about ideas. I have like notebooks and Photoshop files and all this stuff that never sees the light of day because I'm like, someone might steal it. But the reality is, if you don't get it out there, you're just preventing opportunities from happening and a conversation from happening and stuff like this. So that was a really good inspiration. And what actually happened after that is, because of kind of the excitement that generated, I went back to Brendan and wanted to build something else. I probably wouldn't have done that if that moment hadn't happened in that book. So I went back to Brendan and I was like, look, let's build something bigger, better. Let's try and build an app this time. So we built this app with a terrible name called Instabam. And what it did was find Instagram photos from around your location. So you would drop a pin in a map, and it will start streaming in Instagram photos from around where you are. So really, really simple, but this is the first time I built anything that actually had users. People downloaded it, they asked for improvements, and we were just iterating on it and having a lot of fun. It got featured in the App Store, and that was the moment when we decided that we should probably try and build a company off the back of this. Not using this, but actually think of another idea where we could get together and form something that could actually generate revenue. But it was a lot of fun. So this kind of happened. We need to build something bigger. Again, there was no idea. So that was always the sticking point. It's like, you want to do something, but do you know that you're solving a problem? And we kind of thought, okay, should we turn Instabam into a business? But the reality is, it's not a business. It was just a little bit of fun. So we kept going and started thinking about things. And then sort of Marvel came around. And the idea for Marvel came from that experience that I told you about, is that every presentation that you do, what you used to do in agencies, kind of looks like this. You have your design in the middle, some clip art, agency logo, client logo, some arrows, and if you're lucky, like someone will squash down your design to get some paragraph in. So that was the problem. It was that designs just looked terrible. And the other problem was that this really wasn't making the agencies money like it could do. So once you had something tangible on the device that you can send to a client they could play around with, it tended to work a lot better. As you know, like if you're working with a developer, showing them a prototype is better than showing a 30-page PDF. So that was the problem, is like could design have a bigger impact if it was presented and interacted with in a different way? So I told Brendan about this idea, and he was up for it, and then we pulled in another person I used to work with at the same agency called Jonathan, who's a developer as well, and we got cracking on this. And this is kind of us working during the whole summer of 2013 on this idea and trying to get it off the ground. And it took about 3 or 4 months to get a very early version out, which was very shaky, but it kind of did the trick. So in terms of finding co-founders, one of the questions that always comes up whenever I do a talk or whenever I speak to kind of people at earlier stages, how do you find your co-founders? And this is kind of where I started. Like, I'm a kind of passionate person. I kind of feel that if I'm going to do something, I'll do it all the way. You have to find a co-founder that wants that thing that you want in exactly the same way. So if you find someone that's half in or like 75% in, the reality is starting a business is hard and it gets harder and harder over time. If someone's not willing to go that journey with you, then they're probably not the right person for you. I like to, like a lot of people say it's like a marriage or all that other stuff, but the reality is you're going to be spending a lot of time with that person, and more so than your friends and probably your loved ones. So you really want to make sure that that is the right person you want to spend a few years with. So Brendan and Jonathan were equally as passionate, and they were also as bored as me, so they were a perfect fit. And then this is the first version of Marvel. It was a very, very simple landing page, no bells and whistles, just a big button in the middle. It said you can turn your Dropbox images into prototypes, no coding required. You clicked on that button and it asked you to like connect your Dropbox account so you can get your designs. So the magic the magic hook for us was that we hooked up to Dropbox, because everyone at agencies was use Dropbox, and you make multiple changes every single time your client kind of wants to change the logo or text and stuff. If you have to save out a PNG or a JPEG every single time you do that and re-upload it to Marvel, it'd be a huge pain. But we decided to build the whole thing off Dropbox. So that meant that no one had to click a finger. You just hit save in Photoshop or whatever, and then it would just automatically update your designs. So that was a unique thing that we had that drove growth originally. So the next thing that happened was in about a month, we got about 800 users, which at the time was kind of really crazy for us, and we got really, really excited about. And we started to think at the end of that, so about this period of time, we really didn't know whether it was going to be something that people wanted or not. We just thought this is a problem that I had and Brendan kind of empathized with, so we got it done. So the next thing that happened was during this kind of month, like between September and October, and we're getting really excited, I'd actually not been working because I left my job and no one else would hire me in the agency world. So I had about £3.45 in my bank account. And at that point I was like, wow, well, we needed some funding, or I need to get a job to keep this going. And you really ideally don't want to get a job to carry on funding an idea, because you're just going to like get slower and slower over time. And you're going to get stressed about bills and loads of other things, and that's not really ideal if you have this idea that the world needs to see, or that you think the world needs to see. So the idea was go get some funding. One of the lessons from that was save up some money before trying to bootstrap, and I didn't do that, and that was a really stupid thing. So before jumping into the world of starting a startup, best to have some funds, because fundraising takes a lot of time, and building stuff when you're broke isn't fun at all. So the next thing I did was try and figure out if I knew any investors. And I came from a world where I knew other designers, I knew creative directors, but I didn't know any investors. And that whole kind of VC world is completely different to the agency creative world. Different circles, different networks, and so forth. So I really struggled to find anyone that knew an investor. I did try and email all the investors via their contact page on their websites. And that doesn't work because no one checks those inboxes, I found, after speaking to a lot of investors after that time. So I did this. I basically emailed everyone I'd ever worked for including all my ex-bosses, ex-freelance clients, anyone that was senior, and I asked them, do you know anyone that could give us money? And that was that. And then, just by chance, CN, who had worked she was a head of mobile, a client that I had, she said her boss had just quit to become an angel investor, and she did an intro. And that was that. And then we somehow, in the space of like 6 weeks, got this intro. We were their first investment, and then we got 60K. And if you are going for investment, and I'm not sure what stage you're all at, but there is a government-funded scheme called SEIS, where you can get 150K. And at the time, I was so naive that I thought you could build a whole business with 60K and run it for years. So I was like, oh, we only need 60K. Let's not take the 150. So for some reason, we picked 60K, and at least we got started. So we left, we stopped doing what we were doing, and we went Marvel full time. Then we set up a business for like £9.50 online, and we got really excited about building it. And then we rented some desks, and it was really exciting to get out of my kitchen. So we got this co-working space. It was just the three of us in it. And yeah, and this is kind of the time when we actually started to figure out how do we build this thing? What do we do next? One of the things that caught us straight away was that Marvel started breaking almost the day after we got funding. The whole platform went under. It kept crashing every single time more people uploaded images. It's because we built it in a way that it was suitable for a side project, but not necessarily a business to run on. And as it was getting more popular, it was actually getting slower for everyone else. So we had to go back to investors and say, oh, by the way, thanks for that money. It's a really exciting journey we're about to go on. By the way, we are going to rebuild everything and not do anything else for 6 months. So we had to say, right, we have to go from PHP to Django and change the technology and all this other stuff. So all of our timelines, all of the promises we made kind of went out the door there. So 6 months later, after we added payments, we started making money. But at the same time, the 60K ran out because we had hired freelancers to try and help move things quicker, and the investment only covered a very short period of time that we weren't expecting. So we had to raise more funding because the vision had changed. We thought it was a bigger opportunity, but also 3 people working on something is not really the type of platform we wanted to build. We felt that we needed more developers. So we went out and started raising a C round. So I went all around London with pitch deck, went in front of tons of different investors, and at that time, the investment scene was a bit earlier than it is now, so there weren't actually that many seed investors in London, and we got 10 rejections from about 12, a pool of 12 investors. So we were running out of investors in London that would say yes, and it was getting to a point where we had really had no money. So we had contractors, and I got a Wonga to pay them, and it was all going downhill very, very quickly. But what happened was, and just like the book with our kind of snow globe in, I went to a hack day with my co-founder, and we entered it just for fun. Like we were just like, okay, well, let's just do this and see what happens. And it was a very, very small hack day. There was like 15, 20 people there. It was in someone's house. It wasn't very glamorous at all. And we had this idea, and we just ran with it, and we won $500. But the API we used on this hack day happened to be for a startup that was pretty big called Music Match, and it was kind of a lyrics service that has about 50 million users. So the founder of that startup got in touch, and he basically said, we like your idea, thanks a lot. I was like, cool, I'll speak to you some other time. So I decided to email him when we started to fail at finding some funding, and this was months and months later. And he did an intro into the last remaining investor that we hadn't spoken to, and we got funded 3 weeks later, and it was ridiculous. Like, it was one intro from someone with credibility to vouch for me that said that this is someone that you should invest in, and that's all it took. And that's how the VC world works. It's all about reputation, it's all about credibility, it's all about getting your face known and having people to vouch for you within a network that they trust. So at seed stage and angel stage, that's really important. So we got funded, and then TechCrunch decided to run with this headline. I told them what happened, and they put after surviving a Wonga loan, Marvel raises 820K to let you turn sketches and app prototypes. So not exactly the most flattering headline a tech blog could write about us, but we were funded, and we started to really move fast on our roadmap and building out the future of Marvel, which we saw is like teams and collaboration and simpler prototyping. So one of the lessons I learned from this is, because I came into the space, the VC space, the investment space, this kind of startup space, really cold. I should have started building my network months, even years before that. I knew I wanted to build something. What I should have done at that moment is start reading more tech blogs, commenting on people, following people on Twitter, asking for coffee. So when you do go and raise money, you're not a stranger, right? There's so much trust that's involved in raising funds and people deciding to give you money. That building up your profile early on it makes a lot of sense. And that includes like writing blog posts on Medium, like putting out thoughtful tweets, replying to investors on Twitter saying, hey, that's a good idea, whatever. But all those things you've got to build up and you can't just land in it like I did. What does Marvel look like now? We're 40 people. We've got about 1.3 million users, 1.5 now, but 1.5 million designs get uploaded each month and this crazy team over here makes all that happen. Some of our most popular features in Marvel started as a side project. So we've taken the thing that made Marvel and we've used it as a thing to build the culture in the business. So we do hack days, we do things that inspire people to think outside of what the day-to-day tasks are and actually kind of give them a bit of autonomy to think in that way. And we've hired people who have that as a value in them. So we hire people who kind of do hacks and side projects on their own, and they bring that into the business. Some of the things I learned from having no money and how you can use kind of side projects and doing fun things as a way to market yourself. Have any of you seen this website? I'll get it up on the screen. Oh. Let's see if I can get it up. Oh. Let me see, is it? Okay. Do you know the Wi-Fi?
The Wagon.
Yep.
And then all you need is code.
All you need is code.
You can go to any of our 28 cities and it's the same.
Okay, so this website was a massive inspiration, and I'll tell you why. So this is all this website does. It's a bunch of repeated animated dog GIFs, and it's like 8-bit tune. So, how long do you reckon this took to put together? 10 minutes? A couple of hours?
30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I mean, it probably took like a couple of hours, right? Someone had to put it together, put it up on the server. How popular do you think it is? Outrageously popular, right? So it has, let me get this back up and show you. So, and that's actually grown, that's more than that now. So a couple of hours worth of work for that much worth of traffic, and it really makes you think about what it takes to actually build something and market something. The agencies I used to work at, that was more, and I used to work at a global agency with 2,000 people in. This one thing did more traffic and got more virality than all of the projects I did in 1 year. And those projects were, millions, tens of millions were spent. I did one project for, I think it was for Captain Morgan. I spent like tens of thousands of pounds on this iOS app. 5,000 people downloaded it, and it took us like 4 months to build. So, that sort of stuff is when you think about what drives people, and if there's a tone of voice to the internet or your audience, and you really hook into that, then you can make a big impact with very, very little effort. So that was really inspiring. And I was like, right, okay, if it's that easy, let me try to do it myself. So I made this thing. I'll show you a bit more about this one. So dan.net. I was like, right, I can make a repeating thing. So I just basically put this clip of Alan Partridge saying Dan. And that's all it does. It just repeats that. I'll just let it play. Right, so that's all it does. And let me just mute this. So that took, I can't code as well. So the code behind this is horrible. I just hacked together some script that I found. And I put it online. So what I did was I put a Marvel banner at the bottom right-hand corner to see if it would generate any traffic. And it actually did. So it got 60,000 likes on Facebook and 1.5 million views. And it was ridiculous. It was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere for a period of time. Cool. I think I've only got one power slot, so we'll have to. I think I can do this before the 5% runs out. So I was like, wow, okay, there you go. That's a proof point there. And that little banner down there, it drives about kind of 1,000 people a month to Marvel. The problem is the quality of traffic is poor because people who go to dan.net don't necessarily want to get prototyping and collaboration. So, I think it proved something. I'm not sure what. Okay, so that was this thing I did on my own. So I was like, right, if the business can do this, what could happen? So we did a hack day, and the rules behind this hack day was you have to come in and by the time you leave, you have to have shipped whatever idea you've come up with in the morning. And that was it. And we were a small team. There was about 8 of us. And we built this thing. And it didn't have to be related to Marvel. So I was like, okay, forget about like Marvel-related things. Just do whatever you want. And it was called Pick Deck. And basically, it was a way for you to monitor Instagram and feeds and celebrities that you liked in columns. And you could just follow it in real time. So you could be like, okay, I now want to follow Drake. You click Add Column, just a column appear for Drake. And you see whatever post he put or a hashtag or whatever. So we did that. And we put it out there. And then we put it out there on Thursday. By Monday, we came in and it was all over the place. It was like on Mashable, it was on The Verge, it was in kind of everywhere that we could think of. And it was actually growing faster than Marvel, which was a massive problem at the time because we were so distracted by this thing. We were like, well, we've got this job to do. And then we were just seeing the numbers coming on this. So we were thinking, is this the thing that we actually pivot to? And our investors were like, we did not invest in you to do this shit. Stop that now. So like, okay. So basically, we wound down that project. But it was another good experiment. The other thing you can do, which I think works really well, is open sourcing whatever you design or whatever you build and giving it out to the public. So for Marvel, when you view your prototype, we put in this like nice little CSS frame thing, and it shows, so you see it on the screen when you play around with it. And we built those in code. So we released them. We just kind of released the code, and that did really well. So imagine all the stuff that you have, whether it's a bunch of Photoshop files, designs, blog posts, or whatever, just sitting there, probably not seeing the light of day. If you just give them out to people so you can help others, even if that project went nowhere, it can really have a really good impact on you. So we put it on GitHub, and it trended on GitHub. It got to top of Product Hunt, top of Design News, all that stuff. And now it's being used by lots of other people, and they're iterating on it as well because we open sourced it. So even better than that, they're actually making it better. They're making it better than it was before. And the last one is this idea. So we entered as a team to a Dropbox hackathon because they opened an office in London and they invited us along because we had that integration. So we did this. It's called Swapbox. You put a photo into the website, and it will drop it anonymously into another person's Dropbox around the world. And you will get one back anonymously. And it only tells you the location it went and the location your image came from. And then we got this from the Dropbox judge. But it won the Best of Design Award. So we got like a check for $50 or something like that and some Dropbox space. So that was fun. So that's like the marketing side of things and how you can use like all the events and hack days and ideas that you have as a way to gain an advantage. The other thing is designing for emotion. So this is one thing that I really, really recommend looking into. And if you get a chance to buy this book, I recommend that too. It's called Designing for Emotion. And it basically tells you that every single part of your interface or your product is an opportunity to surprise someone, delight someone, or go viral, right? So there are some really amazing examples of this, of products that go that little bit extra in experience or emotion, and you may not even notice it, but they do it and get a cult following, and you can do that with very, very little effort. So one example, if you've ever used MailChimp, so before you send the campaign on MailChimp, you've got this like little nervous chimp hand about to hit the red button. They obviously didn't need to put that little graphic in, but they do, and it works really well for them. Citymapper have these release notes that are like stories, and they put a lot of effort into writing those. Again, like prior to this, there wasn't too many examples of people using release notes to go viral or do anything emotional. It was like bug fixes, new feature, whatever. But actually Citymapper took the time to say that's a competitive advantage we can have, and they put a lot of effort into that. And that works really well, and they get the brand emotion out through that. Slack, I mean, Slack kill it in everything they do, but they have these great loading screens for an enterprise product which say stuff like that, which is unusual because usually enterprise products are kind of like super stiff and not very emotional at all. But they set themselves apart by saying you can actually do that because we're talking to humans. And again, that little message they didn't have to do, but someone did it. This other one called Photo Jojo, this one's a bit crazy, but this is a photo site where you can buy stuff. You scroll to the bottom, a little dinosaur pops up, takes a photo of you. There's a little balloon here, you click on that, and a little Instagram photo comes up from the latest feed, and you can pop the balloon. It's mad, but there's loads of interactions and little things that help build the brand into something that is more than just an e-commerce site, but actually something that has an emotional reaction for the user using it. So I took some of that, as usual, and tried to apply it to Marvel. And this is something we did, and this was like pretty simple. We had a 404 page with fail GIFs on it. And this is kind of where every time you refresh the page, it would show something like a cat falling out of a box or people dancing across the screen and that sort of stuff. So what happened after that was people started to get on Twitter and started to tweet about it and say this is kind of a nice thing that they've seen. And it was a 404 page. Another problem that this caused was that the 404 page was getting more traffic than the website, and more people were covering the 404 page than they were Marvel. But again, I mean, maybe it's a good problem to have. But yeah, it just shows that little thing that we did, just based off some inspiration of some other products, it worked out well. The other thing is the Marvel upgrade page, and this has changed a bit since, but as a startup or any product, the moment that someone decides to part with cash to pay you for what you've built, I think is one of the best things that could happen in a company or product experience. But for most products, all they do after you take their credit card, after they take your credit card, they just show you a tick or they just move you on. But what if you were to celebrate that moment and say, right, thank you so much, you've actually decided to pay for us, that's incredible. So we did this thing, it's really simple. We used the open source framework for it as well. After you enter your card details in and select pay, we generate some HTML5 confetti, and it just falls down the screen to celebrate that time, and it moves along with your mouse and stuff. You can take it to like loads of places, but this is what we did at the time with the resources we had. And yet another thing that kind of helped us set us apart from a market that was getting more and more crowded. And again, like people jump onto Twitter and they say, thank you for upgrading page, money well spent. That's a great thing to hear. So it's a little different. It's the little details that can make the difference between someone liking or loving your product. And that is kind of something we've tried to do, and over time we want to do more of and build it into a process. But when you're early and you're scrappy, it's the thing that can definitely set you apart from what else out there and get people's attention. So that is it.
Should we do some?
Murat, that was awesome. Bloody hell, I mean, all those little touches, all the quick wins.
Yeah.
Absolutely, guys, I think we've just had a talk from our next big tech company. Bloody hell. Dude, that was amazing.
So
thank you.
Should we do a talk?
Yeah, we'll do some questions from the
yeah?
audience. I'm sorry about the screen. It
That's okay.
obviously got knocked when we were throwing the cable over here because I couldn't see it behind me.
That's okay.
But well done.
No?
That was amazing. Guys, please fire away with questions that you have
Yeah.
for Murat. I have a microphone here so people at the back can hear. Let's go, Sam. Do we work, Arthur? We work. There you go.
How was it? Was patenting for the Marvel app fairly difficult, or was it a fairly smooth process for you since it wasn't really done before? Like, could you explain the process between copywriting and not the entire process, but like if it was difficult on your
Yeah, totally. So there are certain things you should definitely patent and get copyrights for. Marvel wasn't one of them. It's because we use common technologies to build Marvel. So we couldn't do anything with the way we built the drag and drop upload or the way you viewed something on your phone, because that had all been done before. If you're building some tech that has never been done before and you think you can protect it, 100% go out and pay for that patent and get it done. But we couldn't do that because we couldn't identify anything that was specifically unique in this. We had not invented anything new. We had combined a bunch of technologies to build Marvel, which is, just because you combine them and it's new, in that sense, it doesn't mean we invented them. but there are certain things that I do recommend that you would go out and do if you're building anything around like financial tech or health tech or any of those things, or that definitely do. Also, it's really expensive and it takes a long time. I think the average cost of something, it was like 2 to 4 grand or something. And at that stage, we were like, it's probably not a good idea to do that. That's the answer to that. We haven't done it. But if we do invent something that I really believe the world has never seen before, and the technology that kind of drives it is new, I would do it, definitely. Yes? Oh.
You talked about hack days a lot. How did you get involved in those?
So if you go to Eventbrite or meetup.com and just type in hack day, there are loads. There's loads. There's loads for every industry as well. So probably there's one for something that you're passionate about, or maybe you want to build in. So I went to a music one, there's a Dropbox one. There's ones that are around government and helping people be more efficient. There's ones about social enterprise and kind of helping disadvantaged people. So there's loads of different ones, and you kind of whatever kind of floats your boat, you pick one. Yes.
What did the book say about your snow globe?
Oh, it was very short actually. The sentence. I think it was like you can use the HTML accelerometer in the snow globe to create an interactive experience. It wasn't gushing about it or anything. It was just like, here's something that was built using an accelerometer, and that was it. So.
Hey man, really enjoyed the talk. Question, how did you find the transition from like the hacky working away in your kitchen bit to having actually raised the seed round and having to like hire people and build a company?
It's really hard. So you kind of get used to working in that way. Like, we're really scrappy. We've got to just like move fast and try and do everything yourself, to the point where you got to try and think about managing people in delegation. And that has always, for me, been kind of a very interesting challenge. You want to go from saying that, okay, I know how to do this really quickly, to wanting to scale that, and how do you scale it? And learning that about yourself as well, because I think getting something off the ground takes a lot of work, but knowing when to let go because you've done the hard work to get off the ground is a challenge. So delegation is really important. Knowing where your weak points are, and realizing there are people who specialize in the things that, all that many hats that you wear, there are people that can do them a lot better. And really what you should eventually want to aim to get to is, after you get all these things up and running, you want to actually start finding talent to take some of this off your hands. The best bit of advice I got I think it was one from an investor. He said you should be looking to give away 2 to 5% of your role every month or every quarter to someone else. And then by the end of the year or 2 years, then you should have a very, very small amount of things to do, which hopefully would be the strategic and future direction of whatever you're building, rather than getting your hands dirty and just like, okay, let me put this email together or put that together. It's like, actually, where do you have the most impact? Is your time really best spent on like looking through the Twitter feed, or is it really, figuring out how to kill a market that you think is super attractive? So that's hard. I mean, it's always going to be, you see something broken, you're like, I want to fix it. But the idea is to help other people find a way to fix it.
We'll make our way forward. I'll get it. Don't worry.
Yes.
Now that you have a successful business, do you still have time for side projects?
Personal ones, no. And I try and use the company as a way to get my side project kind of urges out. So we do have things going on, and it's one of the reasons why I'm pushing a major project at the moment. So we are building an API for Marvel, so you can build whatever you want on top of Marvel. Whereas in the past, we had to find other APIs to play around with, and it was like, okay, you've always got a bit of a detachment from that, because you're like, this is someone else's stuff that we're making something cool with. So now we have beta launched our API, and we're able to build cool hacks and things off Marvel. So we can do anything we want with Marvel and turn it into other services. So that's where I'm kind of getting that outlet from now. It's the same with just designing in general. I don't design as much anymore, and that's always a bit weird. You just look at something like, I could change that, but you tend to not have time. So I'm getting gradually over time, I'm getting into a stage where I'm actually not a very good designer at all, and I'm just hiring good designers now. So that's the kind of flip side of it.
Hi, I really enjoyed your talk. Do you think it's a good idea to sort of pressure test your ideas before you go to market, and or you try to get seed funding, and did you do that, or did you think about doing that?
So to avoid the situation that we're in, where we were crashing and getting slower. Is that what you mean?
Well, just did you think you had a market for your product?
Oh no. I mean, I'll be honest. Like when we started it and we made it, I didn't think anyone was going to use it. I thought, okay, I might have a couple of designer mates that would use it. You need to be able to validate that in some way. It depends on the risk you're taking on. I think some ideas are a lot riskier than others. If you're having to bet your house on something, you probably want to validate it in a very big way before you decide to commit and do it that way. If it's something that you're saying, well, it's going to take me a few weekends over the course of 6 months, then it might not be as something that you need to kind of be so sure about because you're having fun doing it. And it depends on your end goal. I think that if you're super set on turning it into a business and this idea just does not like let up and you're so passionate about it and nothing will stop you, then I think that doing whatever you can to make sure that's the right thing is a good idea. If you're having a bit of fun, then there's a lot less pressure. Ideally, you don't want to take a big jump into something without knowing at least that you're solving a problem. And it's not just like this problem that you perceive, it's actually other people perceive as well. And it's also hard speaking to people when you're testing, because some people in your close group might just say things you want to hear, and you have to actually go beyond that. Because I think I've got mates who look at some stuff I've made and go, yeah, that sounds really cool. And you try and press them a little bit, and they don't want to upset you and tell you shit. But I think it's good to get a range of opinions before jumping into something, definitely.
Hi.
Hello.
You briefly mentioned Dropbox integration in
Yes.
the beginning. Can you explain the sub-story?
Yeah, so it started off with working in an agency and using Dropbox. And the whole agency had Dropbox to store files. And during that time when we were building this, we also had very limited cache. And we were thinking, well, the amount of storage space we need to store all these files, like Photoshop files and all that other stuff, would be very expensive. What if we could bring your own storage to Marvel, and you could connect your Dropbox account, and instead of making people bring their files to you, you just go to the files, and that makes it a lot easier, because the minute you connected with Dropbox on Marvel, the first version of it, it would just list your directory of files. It's just all there. There wasn't like it's separate computers or your desktop or your downloads folder. It was just like all there. You can pick any file in your whole business, turn that into a prototype, and that was really powerful. And that was the idea. It was like a user experience thing and an efficiency thing. Also saved us a lot of money of having to host those PSDs on our server. So there was so many benefits to doing it when we were small. So initially it was a really, really good way to grow and have that kind of differentiation. But actually over a year and a half, it became a problem for the business to grow because we were only relying on Dropbox users to use Marvel. And it stunted our growth. And the minute we switched to being able to sign up and use Marvel without Dropbox, we doubled our signups. But those initial signups were great because they were great advocates and they helped us grow. But we were blocking other people from using Marvel. So yeah, it started off as a good idea, but I mean, I think like most things, you have to take a look at something and see if it needs to be modernized and changed. So yeah, it was a user experience thing, I think, mostly. No, it's great. I mean, most of the APIs out there for all the services that you use every day, whether it's Instagram to Dropbox to Twitter, have public APIs. You don't need to ask permission to use them unless you're doing something that's super high volume and making their service creak. So yeah, like most of the APIs out there of the services that you use or you want to tie together are free to use. You just have to just type it into Google and you get all the docs and it gets started. Cool.
Two-part question.
Yeah.
So first bit is, what was the biggest cost that you didn't anticipate in terms of financial costs? And the second part is, what was the biggest hurdle in terms of producing the actual product that you didn't anticipate?
So the biggest cost, I think that, so there's personal costs, which are like rent and all that stuff. So obviously that kept happening, as annoying. Then the cost to the business was, I think, underestimating the cost of services that you plug into your platform to make it work and how those grow over time, especially when you're small. So are you familiar with things like Zendesk or Intercom and those sorts of things? So when you start off, they're kind of really easy, but as soon as you get to quite a small amount of scale on some of them, they get really expensive and they're hooked into your service and you've like committed to it and all your data's in there. So it's like being really wary of what you decide to bolt onto your service to make it work and trying to be scrappy as you can early on, because you can always change that stuff later. Contractors, I think we probably tried to do too much with contractors earlier on. looking back, I probably would have just hired someone instead, because we were like, right, things are breaking, we have to do something quickly. Let's find a freelancer, and it's obviously that was like a short-term fix, like a band-aid. But what we should have really done is just put the word out for a full-time person to come in, and we paid over the odds for a couple of freelancers to try and help us, but our money just went down so quick because they charged like 300, 400 a day, and that was a cost. We paid ourselves very, very little in that 60K. I think we paid ourselves something like 18K a year to try and run Marvel and keep it going. So, and prior to that, we'd been on more because we were just full-time employees. So we took almost half our salary as a pay cut. So that was kind of tricky, but we tried everything to eke the most out of the money we had. Batteries run out. We tried to basically do anything. We asked people for server space. You know, we begged, borrowed, and stealed. And the thing is, if you don't ask, you don't get. We actually asked for free servers from a company called, I can't remember it now, Equity Servers or something. And we said, look, we've got this cool startup. Can you give us some free server space? And they gave it to us. And we asked someone else like Intercom for free discounts and all this other stuff. And we got it. It's just because we were asking. And if you can do that, I think that there's it's probably unexpected that stuff happens, but you just have to ask. And then, you know, you never know who you might get through to. Again, like, you don't ask, you don't get. So that was kind of a good thing as well. Sorry, what was your second question?
What was the biggest thing you didn't anticipate in terms of actually bringing the products?
I think thing we didn't expect. I think marketing as well. That plays a role. I think that marketing doesn't shield having a product that people don't want, but when you've got something kind of working, I think marketing can play a big part in getting the word out. I was very naive to what marketing could do. Even just having a blog post, like a blog that was regularly updated, and a Twitter account and Facebook. I mean, we didn't sign to Facebook until like a year and a half ago. It was ridiculous, but the impact of those and what they could do if you maintain them properly and have a good strategy. Having a strategy overall is good as well. Just knowing where you want to go and what steps, working backwards from there. And that might be a monetary thing. You might want to get a certain amount of revenue. What steps, if you work backwards, what do you need to do, who do you need to hire, and what your vision is, and articulating that. And if you are about to start a company and you do have people that work for you, setting some company values early on would really help. And we got to that quite late. So what do you stand for? You know, when you hire people, what values do you want them to have? How are they going to fit with your company and the culture, and build that up? And if you set that early on, it's actually really easy to scale it from there because there's so much groundwork done. But after about 10, 20 people and you haven't done it, it's actually hard to retrofit it because you've made some personnel hires that might not fit the culture or values that you want. So setting those early on, and they're not really that hard to do. You just open up a slide and start writing stuff that you believe in. Talk to your co-founder. Say, what do we believe in? What do you want this company to be? And then you have a company of people which you love working with because they're all, you know, similar to your values, and you have a good time. Yes.
Yeah, two-part question as well. The reliability issues that you had in the beginning, how did that affect, the users joining and so on? And would you say, and then the second part is, would you say that you would have been better off before going public with your product, polishing everything off?
Yeah, so I think on the first question, how did it affect us? I definitely think it hindered us attracting bigger clients and bigger customers. We were getting, Marvel has a bottom-up approach where we go with designers, and then designers move us up into management. Managers decide to buy Marvel, and it's like Dropbox. Like, a lot of people use Dropbox and they get to a cap in the product and go, okay, we need to buy it for the company. So Marvel doesn't go in at like the CTO, CEO level. We don't need to speak to those types of users. We speak to head of design, VP of design. So if those designers are then coming into Marvel saying, this is buggy as hell, and they say that to their manager who needs to pay for Marvel, then they're not going to pay for it. So that reputation was bad early on. We got away with a lot because we gave everything away for free and for most of the products. So there was a lot of goodwill there. So you can, I think, if we were saying pay us $200 and here's this thing that is absolute shit and breaks all the time, then that's going to cause a lot of issues. But because it was free, I think people were like, well, it's free. I'll take the bad with the good. But early on, it does affect your positioning if you're just buggy all the time. And your second question, sorry.
Would you have thought that you would have been better off by really maybe delaying the release and sorting out everything?
No. So I think that getting your stuff out early and often is really good because you can hold on to it thinking, oh, we're just going to build this like amazing architecture or fix all these bugs and release it and like shit, no one wants this. By releasing it early, at least we ran into almost a big problem that as more people signed up, Marvel broke more, which is better than, I guess we could have spent six to 8 months working on this and break the back end and find out that no one ever wanted it. So I think testing and getting things out early, despite doesn't matter what state it's in, but you just need to validate. You need some proof points that you want to go to the next stage, and if you can do that, I think people will forgive some bugs, and they'll let you know if they care about what you're building. They'll contact you and tell you, hey, these bugs are here, and I want them gone because I want to use this thing. So that was good, but I'm still glad we released things early. I just actually think we should have raised more money to hire people instead of taking 60K. We're taking the whole SEIS allowance of 150.
You mentioned early that you swapped from PHP to Django.
Yeah.
Why choosing Django over all the other options?
Yeah, so this is 3 years ago. So, and also it was my CTO's decision, Brendan, so he knows more. But the idea was that Django, I'm not a developer, so you have to bear with me. Django comes with a back-end management system, which is fairly easy for you go into and manage the databases and entities that are in there. So, for example, if we set up a plan with a pricing plan with a certain amount of users that you have on it and a certain amount of projects, that was fairly easy for me to manage because I can log into the Django admin, and it was also kind of easy for him to set up. And it was like RESTful. It came with APIs and whatnot. But the idea was that it should be manageable by other people in the business, all the content that's on there. So early on, it really benefited us because I could go in and I could mess around with a user's account. I was the customer support at that time, so I didn't want to have to ask Brendan to open up whatever he has to open up, PyCharm or whatever it is, and make some changes. So that helps. And now actually we still use the Django admin. Even our support team uses it. They go in and they look at have to change people's accounts and they use that. So over time we'll build a custom interface and all that stuff. But right now it was what was available at the time. Was it quick? Would it allow us to scale? And were some of the biggest companies using it? And we needed those proof points, and that's why he chose it, I think. Yes?
How did you transition from free to like a freemium or a premium?
Yeah, we're still transitioning, to be honest. We were free for a very long time, maybe up until a year and a half ago. We gave unlimited projects for free. And we decided to start capping projects because we wanted to figure out a pricing structure that would scale. And projects is a really good one because you're obviously getting more value the more projects you use, and we use that. But what's interesting now is having an enterprise offering. I'm not sure what ideas you're working on, but if you are working on anything that's related to software as a service and people paying a monthly subscription for doing work stuff, enterprise offering is really important. And that is packaging your product up into this premium product that only the biggest companies in the world get to use. They have different budgets, different buying processes. They don't get out their credit card. They go through procurement. They go through a number of finance teams to buy software. It takes a long time, and they spend a lot more money. So one of those customers can be worth hundreds or thousands of people that pay with their credit card. So you want to have an offering that actually looks like it's the real deal, takes care of security or whatever. But rather than build it all, one of the mistakes, what I would recommend is just putting a page up and saying it's coming soon, and just say put your email address in if you want to hear about it. Then you actually validate it. And again, that's something I wish we would have done early on. And then if you get 5 emails in the space of a couple of months of people wanting your enterprise plan, then the minimum amount they're going to pay is several thousands of dollars or whatever. So validating it that way, being really scrappy would make a lot of sense. Then you should go hire some developers and build it. You have to have a contract, get some commitments, get people to pay, and then you can go and start bringing in those customers. I think that works well. If any of you have, if you haven't read it, there's a post by a guy that created a service called Buffer, and he talks about how he validated his entire business without ever writing a piece of back-end code. And all he did was put up this service with a landing page, and it said, hey, Buffer can schedule your tweets for you automatically, and that's all it did. It said, sign up here, or pay now. So you click pay now, and it shows you free plans. None of those plans existed. They were just plans on the page. And what he did is he tracked the buttons, which is really, you can do it through Google Analytics or whatever, and to see if how much would people pay for this. He had a $5 plan, a $20 plan, and he just tracked it. And he saw that, you know, of the 100 people that went through to that page, something like X amount of people clicked $5 and a bunch of people clicked $20. So he's like, all right, well, now I've got a customer base. Plus, they've given me their email address to find out when it's released. And he basically then decided that he had a validation of like 100 odd people, and he would have customers from the get-go. He built it. He emailed the people that said, I want this when it comes out. And he had customers from day one. But it did not exist. You know, you could do that with Squarespace. You could do it with WordPress. You could do it with any site. You could put your landing page up tomorrow, start tracking the clicks and seeing if anyone wants it. And that, I would say, is a great way to validate. You know, you could even put up Facebook ads that goes to it and, you know, and says, you know, this thing is real, and just see what happens from that.
I think we've got time for a couple more. Let's go on here.
Yeah.
And then we've got the rest. Got to get on the slide.
Is there any plans to implement micro interaction?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one. It comes up almost every day with support tickets and Twitter and whatnot. Yes, there definitely is. We are doing it in a bit of a different way. So we are leading with our API, which I mentioned. So our API will have the ability to do things like that, but the product itself won't. And what we want to do for the moment is encourage the ecosystem who have these amazing interaction and micro interaction tools to use Marvel's API to push those in. So if you use something like, for example, let's say you use Framer, right? If you could upload something like Framer into Marvel and utilize the interaction you made there, Marvel could use that and share it. That would be the first step. And then the second step would be, how do we build a really simple micro interaction tool? Micro interactions are really funny. It's like everyone, I think it takes a lot of time and effort to understand it fully and you get the most out of it. But if you were to break it down into how Keynote does interactions, would that bring more people into the space and being able to try it out? So we could build something that would be quite complicated, but I'd like us to come up with something that would be something that allows more and more people to try interactions and get involved and not get bogged down with like a Flash-like timeline and things like that.
Sorry, the second part of my question is, what's the future backlog for features?
So there's loads in there. We have a design tool that we're building. We've got a wireframing tool. We're building an API. So those are the main projects. We're doing a revamp of the whole UI. We've moved from Backbone to React, so we're rebuilding all that to make it faster. There's quite a lot of things that in Marvel that are legacy or maybe suited for the time it was created, but no longer. So we're rethinking everything and kind of building up from scratch. And that takes a bit of time. But the main things right now is we have a design tool that is in the browser, and you can design on there or on your phone using loads of different pre-made elements and assets. The idea is that whatever you're doing, what we want to build towards is whatever you do in Sketch can be imported into Marvel and be used in our design tool and vice versa, so you can actually have access to more and more assets. That's one thing. And then, yeah, the rest is, I can't tell you. But there are some really interesting opportunities in Marvel. So the vision of Marvel is because we built this design tool, we built a developer handoff tool, we're moving more towards becoming a suite of tools rather than just being about prototyping. So that's kind of where we're heading. And we've been on that track for a year now. So the idea is that you should come into Marvel and be able to do multiple things that are going to help you work better. Yes?
Yeah, would you say sort of like there's a metric for gaining credibility? Just to sort of like getting sort of like ahead of yourself, sort of like, just to make sure.
A metric for credibility?
In a sense, like if sort of like you're on your way,
yeah.
This is sort of like the progress you should be seeing. Sort of like
oh, right, that's a good question. So almost like, how do you know you're moving forward and you're validating yourself? I mean, it'd be different for everything you guys are doing. So it would be, so let's say you're very early stage. Your idea is on a piece of paper.
Complete unknown.
Yeah, complete unknown. Your idea is on a piece of paper. First thing you want to do is make sure that your first validation point is make sure your idea is something that people want before even building anything. So you could do that through the Squarespace idea, like Buffer did, or whatever, with a landing page and an email capture form. And then you find that thing. Then the next stage is to figure out what it would take to make that real. Then go off and find out if that is funding, if that is hiring someone, finding a friend to build it with you, and then get into that first version and then validating it all. So it's each stage is very, very different. And I think you want to feel like you're making progress and momentum. So you're basically validating things that you are assuming. And that's, if you can do that, and each time you're validating, you're answering a bigger question, and you kind of want to do that. Does anyone want my idea? Next stage is, would anyone pay for my idea? Would anyone fund my idea? Would anyone work for me? How do I build a company? Yeah, just keep going up, right? And you want to build up to there. But once you get to a certain point, you'll have people to help you. And if you're not thinking about a co-founder, I do recommend getting one, because a lot of this stuff is like on your shoulders, and you need someone that is able to jam with you, take these ideas, run with them, help you out, you help them out. One good thing a friend of mine said is that, who has another startup, he says, as a founder, as a CEO, you can have a bad day or a bad week, but if you have a great co-founder, they could be having a great week, so you never really lose momentum. And that's the best thing about it. It's like you could be having like a super shitty time and nothing's working for you, but your co-founder is smashing it. And it's like, yeah, you're always making progress, and vice versa. Like no one can run 100% all the time. So having a great co-founder to back you up, or great co-founders, is, I think, a really valuable thing, and finding someone that just wants to do it as much as you. Yes?
In terms of like getting investors,
yes,
and working things out with your co-founders, how did you work out equity?
That's a very good question. So we did equal split, because we were just like, well, let's all go in together. Don't want to make it weird. Don't want to be like someone has more than the other. And then be like, it's my idea, I get this. And like, nothing existed yet, right? I had some designs. I couldn't get those designs built without these talented co-founders. So really, it's like, cool, I came up with the idea, who cares? It's not going to exist unless they build it. So we went equal on that, which is 33.33333 on company's house, or whatever it was at the time. And when investors come in, investors will essentially value your business based on a couple of different things. If you have no revenue, they will base it on potential revenue or opportunity. If you have no revenue, your business isn't really worth anything. It's all on a promise of it being worth something. So at that time, we were like, okay, we had a set amount we wanted to give away, and we were like, what is reasonable for 60K? And we thought, okay, well, something around 10% is reasonable. We have nothing at this point, right? We have this kind of shaky thing that we've barely pieced together with sellotape, and then we think like somewhere around 10% is fair. And then as you start getting bigger and you start getting more traction, then you have more leverage to say, well, actually, no, this is worth more. If you've got more revenue, if you're starting to bring in cash, then brilliant. Then you can actually say that my company is worth this, because I can prove it, because this is how much it makes a year. Therefore, you have much more leverage and you can get a better deal. So it all comes down to risk. Investors want to, they want to make sure that they have a certain amount of, they have a certain stake, and they're taking a risk investing in you, and they want something back for that. And that could be a bigger stake or whatever. If you have reasons to make them feel assured that it's not a risk, then you're in a much better position. If you're like, well, we've been running for 10 years and we've made £5.50, then they're going to be like, well, that doesn't sound like a great opportunity, and it's going to be a lot of risk because I might lose all my money. So that's kind of it. Yeah. Cool.
How are you doing?
No, I'm fine. I can ask a couple more if anyone's got any more. Yeah. Wait, what? One more there?
Yeah, one more left. All right. One more. Go, Murat. You choose.
What's your feeling about using sign-in APIs, like on LinkedIn or Facebook?
As in,
Well, on one hand, Facebook or LinkedIn will get a lot of data about their users. On the other hand, if you don't use them, you might limit the number of people that sign up.
That's a very good point. So if your whole platform is based on another platform, like we were early on, if Dropbox ever said to us, no, we're going to cut you off, then Marvel's broken and we have to figure out something to do that. Luckily, it was file upload, so you can upload in many different ways, so we could have built a new way to do that. But if your whole thing is you're based on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, and without those services, your service no longer works, then it's really risky. It's really risky. So I don't know the answer to that. There's been tons of successful businesses that have been built off Facebook and Twitter. But you do want to have something else to you, I think. That.
I don't know if you're familiar with the story of House Party.
Yeah,
They used
a little bit.
Facebook's API and then Facebook cloned them and then reached out to all the Facebook users saying, hey, come on to us.
That's cold-blooded. I don't. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. So you just want to be like, give us your email and password, or sign up with Facebook. But when you click sign up with Facebook, it doesn't mean you don't ask for the email and password as well. You can still link a Facebook account to email password. So I would do that. I would definitely always make sure you're collecting the email addresses and passwords, and don't give that over. Last one. Anyone? Yeah. Oh shit. Last two.
So you have the Wagon.
Yes.
How pivotal was that in the business? Because obviously it's kind of a dark time to take Wagon.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, it sounds like if you hadn't taken it, the business might collapse.
Yeah, so at that stage, luckily the business just consisted of the founders, right? So if it was like those 40 people that you saw and I was standing up in front of the company saying, we're just taking a Wagon loan to pay you, it'd be a very different thing. So the vibe was like, okay, this is hard. And we were still determined because we were so excited. I think it was, it was tricky and difficult and it was annoying, and being broke, it was hard. But we were so excited about coming in every day that it wasn't too much of a bother. So there was no kind of culture drop or anything because it was just the founders and we were all cool with each other and it was like, look, let's just do this. And we're like, let's do it. And that was done. As you get bigger and you have people that actually rely on you more than you're just co-founders, then definitely the vibe does not want to be that you're getting money from a payday loan company to pay them. Last one.
Any tips on hiring and like standing out as an employer? Like you're trying to hire great designers.
Yeah, man, it's hiring. Tips for hiring. I would, any particular role or hiring in general? Designers. All right, okay, so this I can help with. Designers, they hang out in certain places online, like Dribble and so forth. The best designers are kind of putting their work out there. The others are going to meetups and things like that. There are a lot of designers who are very, very entrepreneurial and want to start something new if they believe in it. And we're quite an emotional kind of bunch, right? We're driven by creativity. If you can play our strings, like you can definitely make us passionate about something. If you can get someone else as excited as you are about your idea, and then getting them on board. So that's one thing I learned about pitching to investors and whatever, is telling a story, right? You have to have a story down that really resonates with the person that you're telling to, whether they're a customer or a designer or whoever. And if you can kind of tell that story in a way that gets them excited to the point where they're like, I have to be a part of this, then you're doing really well in your pitch, and that's a great place to start. Then there's things like, okay, LinkedIn. LinkedIn's great for job ads, pretty much. It's got good reach. Dribble job ads is good. Writing a job description that treats that first designer like a very, very important person because they're coming into something new, there's a lot of risk. Is a good thing. Like being completely open up front, laying out your vision, I think is a really good thing. Showing that you appreciate design and don't just expect it to be like a means to an end, and you want someone that's going to really think this stuff out is important too. So I think all of those combined, it's hard. Like I'm trying to think of what could give you a competitive advantage or just an advantage in the stage you're at. But I think going out, just like I mentioned before, building a network. Making sure that you're kind of following the best designers or the designers that you think relate to some of the things that you want to do, or they've done a piece in their portfolio that you think is a match, and you just, again, like start following them from today, reaching out to them on Twitter, keeping up to date, dropping an email, ask me out for a coffee, ask for their advice, build your network, and worst case scenario, you've made a great new connection. Best case scenario, that either that person says, I want to work with you at some point because I get on with you really well, or they're just, they're going to give you an intro to someone that they think is going to be suited. Just like some of the things that you saw with the investment we got is because I got that one person helped just tell someone else that I was good to go for a round of investment, and the same would happen with design. If someone came to me who I liked but I just couldn't work with, I would definitely recommend them to someone else in my designer friends. So definitely do that.
Murat,
cool.
Thank you so much, guys.
No worries.